Okay, thank you, Dave.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Hammond Redevelopment Commission meeting to order on this Thursday. It's November 1st, 2018. It's a special meeting, and it's now 4:30. Can you please stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence after? Thank you. Can we have a roll call on the commissioners?
Soto Presley,
Here.
Kasperky,
Here.
Convejas,
Here.
Myrick,
Here.
Hawbridge.
Here. For the record, all five are present tonight. Number 3 is declaration of conflict of interest. Okay, number 4, approval of development agreement with DX Hammond OpCo LLC.
Members of the commission, the development agreement is in your packet for your review. The long-awaited development agreement that I've been previewing for about 2 months. I'm going to kind of run through some of the highlights. And while I do that, I actually have an artist rendition of what, it's not going to be exactly this, but it'll be substantially similar to some of these photos of what this is, data center is ultimately going to look like. Essentially, the terms of the development agreement, you'll recall that we entered into a purchase agreement with the owner of the property at the last meeting, whereby we agreed to buy 5 acres and the owner agreed to donate 39 acres for a total of 44 acres. Now that closing is pending and forthcoming here in the not too distant future. But of the 44 acres that's located up at the former State Line Energy Plant, we are going to enter into a ground lease agreement with the developer, Hammond OpCo. The ground, you'll remember they were the only bidder for that ground lease. We're going to enter into a ground lease, and they're going to construct phase 1 of the data center and technology hub, which is going to consist of a 105,000 square foot building, a total investment of about $40 million. They're going to put a flagpole up at the corner, which is actually the northeast corner. It's going to be we believe, the second or first largest flagpole in the state of Indiana. It'll be clearly visible from the skyway. The developer is going to provide space for a bike path to go through, so there will be a bike path that traverses that entire former State Line area. There's some access roads that they need to maintain, and with that $40 million investment, the city's providing an incentive, a total incentive, if you saw in section 1.11 of the development agreement, of about $11.7 million. Of that $11.7 million, $10.5 million, an amount not to exceed $10.5 million, will be in a TIF incentive, which is in staggered payments over a period of time. The $3 million upon beginning construction, $2 million when they have the steel structure built, and then 50%, or the last 50%, I guess it'd be $5.5 million, paid upon the developer receiving occupancy permits. The nice part about this potential TIF deal is that the developer is essentially assuming all the risks. So if the assessment doesn't come in at the $40 million, they've arranged for the financier or purchaser of those bonds. So the city has no obligation. Their taxes are going to be the sole thing that funds their incentive, and it's going to be over a period of 23 years. As I said, this is phase 1. They're looking at other phases that could drive the investment, upwards of $150 to $200 million. We are going to maintain the bike path. Obviously, we're going to enter into a ground lease with them that you approved a couple weeks ago. And that ground lease will provide that within the first 11 years, they have the right to purchase the property at the fair market value. So we may wind up at some point in the first 10 or 11 years selling the property to them at the fair market value, which $2.5 million. That's sort of the highlights of the development agreement. The big things are that we're leasing them the land, and they're going to put in a $40 million investment, of which their taxes will be the sole source of funding for a bond, which will give proceeds of $10.5 million. I think I got all the highlights. And you can tell it's an important deal because we have all the Hammond dignitaries in the audience. So if I screwed that up, I'm sure Phil will be the first to jump to the microphone and...
With all the players here, if you were screwed up, somebody would have jumped up already. So.
Well, the one I worry about most is Heather, so if I messed up the numbers, that would have been a problem, so...
I know we've been waiting for this, so without further ado, Mr. President, I move for the approval of development agreement with DX Hammond Opco LLC.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the approval of development agreement with DX Hammond Opco LLC. If there's no further questions or discussion, we have a roll call now.
Soto Presley?
Yes.
Hasperky?
Yes.
Abejas?
Yes.
Myricks?
Yes.
Poppers?
Yes. Motion passes 5 yes. Okay. Number 5 is approval of excavation remediation proposal for 2825 JF Mahoney Drive.
Commissioner Soto Presley asked where this was. This is the former FOP site that is part of a development agreement with the Ice Cube for the hockey complex that you approved several months ago. And as part of what we're doing as the owner prior to transferring the property, we're hoping to set a closing in the next couple weeks. But they need to get going on the excavation, and a part of our deal was that we would help and pay for the excavation. It's taking out some of the bad material, figuring out how far down they got to go, and then putting soil in that will support this sort of project, or really any sort of buildable structure there. I've been talking to Mr. Poland today through email. This number may be high depending on the once they dig in and what they find, how far down they got to go, and what they have to replace. So I would ask that you move to approve the excavation remediation proposal with Gary Material Supply in an amount not to exceed $160,000. If it comes in less, obviously we're a beneficiary of that. If it turns out that there needs to be more, and that it'll be Wally's favorite thing, a change order. But what I'm told this morning is that this is probably the highest it would be, and that it's probably going to come in a little lower. Well, if you approve it as an amount not to exceed, then I don't have to mess with it. Even though Wally would like a change order that's less, I don't have to mess with another change order. But if they do come in higher, you'll see a change order. Hopefully that's not the case. Dean wants to talk. Yeah, we'll let.
So I agree with everything that the attorney said, but I would caution the board to be prepared. There are some additional professional services that need to be taken place as part of this work, meaning geotechnical observation. We don't want the contractor to decide what's good and what's bad material. we want the geotechnical engineer to decide what's good, because they're separating that material out. And the engineer is going to survey the material quantities on a daily basis, so you should see those proposals forthcoming.
And Dean, is it, like, we have a meeting next Thursday, so will we have an idea by next Thursday?
I believe we know what those numbers are now, but we just need to get the proposal in to the
Okay.
commission. So there will be cost, but it won't be through Gary Materials Services. There'll be independent contracts with the professional services groups.
Well, shouldn't we wait till that's in the,
I think we want to get this.
We got to get it started because we're racing
We want
the
to get
winter.
this going, but should we not put the not to exceed 160,000 clause in, or should we? since
You can, because it's only for Gary
regarding
Materials
Gary
Services.
Material or-
You should expect to see 2 other contracts
contingent on?
with other,
Professional
with
services.
other companies that are professional services for the project, this part of the project work. It's not, we don't expect to see Gary Materials Services cost to exceed $160,000. And that would be the only contract that you're signing with that company.
For this line item, it would be not to exceed 160.
That's correct.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve the excavation remediation proposal for 2825 JF Mahoney Drive and not to exceed $160,000.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Can we have a roll call on that, please?
Toto Presley?
Yes.
Casperky?
Yes,
Abejas?
Yes.
Myrick?
Yes.
Albridge?
Yes, motion passes, 5 yes. Okay, number 6, approval of the installation of 4-section traffic signals at 167th and Indianapolis Boulevard.
I might address the commission again, thank you. This is also a project through the engineering department. We're requesting approval of this particular project. I've coordinated with the Indiana Department of Transportation. This is in Indiana 152 Indianapolis Boulevard, so it's a state highway. Our concern at this location is the sports complex and the accessibility to the complex, that it's very difficult for traffic to make a left turn from northbound Indianapolis onto 167th, which is pretty much the primary entrance to the facility off of the boulevard. These will be the traffic signal. This is the left turn signal head, and it will provide the ones that you've seen, the new one like at Goslin and Calumet, the ones up at the Marina Development District. You'll see that flashing yellow permissive left turn symbol. Right now, the traffic signal only allows a left turn after the Indianapolis Boulevard traffic pretty much clears. It gives you a constant green. The problem is there's not enough signal time, and to adjust that signal time would take away timing from the other traffic, either the main line or the cross traffic. So we want to create or replace the signal heads, both north and southbound, with these 4-headed symbols that provide a permissive yellow left turn into the complex to make it easier to get traffic in and out of that location.
we approved this already, or we just discussed it? It seems like we've had this
Yeah.
discussion.
We've talked about it.
Certainly not
I
against it.
I do have a question, though. So that signal, is that going to be adjusted at the times when we have special functions going on, or is it an?
It's adjustable.
Okay.
So what our expectation is, NDOT helped us with the traffic count now before we see a lot of activity, or a few weeks before the center, the complex opened. So we will be able to program the system typically for Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Well, it will see a different type of traffic volumes in that area.
Yeah, I think
And-
I asked that before.
So but we kind of have to see how it develops too. We want to
Right.
be proactive about what we expect to happen at this location. Okay, thank you.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
I make a motion for approval of the installation of 4-section traffic signals at 167th and Indianapolis Boulevard.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the approval of the installation of 4-section traffic signals at 167 Indianapolis Boulevard. Roll call, please.
Total Presley?
Yes.
Espricki?
Yes.
Navejas?
Yes.
Myrick?
Yes.
Albridge?
Yes, motion passes, 5 yes. Okay, number 7, new and unfinished business. I think we have an item tonight.
You have a right of entry agreement, and this sort of dovetails in with number 5. The Ice Cube hockey complex. This agreement, because we haven't closed on the property yet, allows the developer the temporary right to enter the property for purposes of performing foundation preparation and other construction activities. The term's for 120 days, although I don't anticipate that that term will go to fruition, because I anticipate in the next 2 to 3 weeks by Thanksgiving, I want to have this thing closed. So they're going to own the property at that point anyway. But in order for them to start, and for us to be protected as the landowner, because you'll see a lot of the legal protections on paragraph 4 and 5 and 6 on down, if we're going to let them on what's essentially our property, even though it's going to be their property, to do this stuff, we need those protections. So we're asking that you approve this agreement.
And everything here names Ice Cube, but that includes Gary Material and such, or is Gary, whatever that company was, sorry. Yeah, Gary, and I mean, they'll be using the property too, and that's included in this?
Yeah, they're going to be working in conjunction. I mean, the Gary Materials is part and parcel of what they need to do.
Right. Mr. President, I move for the approval of the right of entry agreement between the Hammond Redevelopment Commission and the Cube Sports Complex LLC.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further questions or discussion, roll call on that, please.
Total Presley?
Yes.
Espricki?
Yes.
Navejas?
Yes.
Myrick?
Yes.
Albridge?
Yes, motion passes, 5 yes. Any more new and unfinished business? Okay, number 8's public comment. Anybody like to come forward? You have 3 minutes. Okay, public comment closed. Number 9.
Mr. President, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Can you all signify by aye?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned.